Welcome, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever you might be in the world. I hope that you're all doing great, and welcome to our Hilo gathering, April edition. I'd love to know where everybody's calling in from. So why don't you just unmute and say hello?
Oh,
Hello from Idaho.
Hello from the Portland metro area in Cascadia bioregion.
some maps and things out of the table. Where did that one come from?
Hello from Folsom, California.
Hello from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oaxaca, New Mexico.
Howdy from northern Colorado.
Ontario, Canada.
Connecticut, USA.
Dayton,
Eastern,
Ohio.
Go ahead.
Eastern Pennsylvania.
Awesome.
Here in Oklahoma.
Amazing. Well, welcome everybody. Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Yasmin Albagari. I am the community steward for Hilo. And with me, my colleagues are Tibet and Claire, who are going to be co-hosting with me today. So, how many of you are new to Hilo and this is your first call? Maybe you could just raise your hand. Welcome, Ryan. Welcome, Meridian. Yay. Matthew, welcome, welcome. So good to have you in here. So, as you probably have heard, Hilo is a community-led pro-social coordination platform for purpose-driven groups. And our main purpose is to activate the full potential of these groups so that we can create a flourishing future for all life. This is what our mission, and this is why we're here. So I would love to invite, let's see, how about Claire to share a little bit about some exciting updates?
Cool. Hey, everybody. So excited to see all of you today. And can I share my screen, Yasmin? I'm the director of product for Hilo. And one thing I'm excited to share, this is kind of like sneak peek status, but we're working on a new landing page for Hilo because the one that we have is a little bit old. And we're really excited to just communicate more effectively all of the features that Hilo offers, the use cases, who it's for, and things. And so I'm going to show a little sneak peek of that with a request. So I will go ahead and open this. So I'm just showing, this is like the header part when you land on the page. Hilo is where people get organized, stay connected, and grow together. And then what I'm especially wanting to share is that we are going to be featuring groups on the homepage. And these are some of the groups on Hilo, but this is just a mock-up. This is not live on the internet. I'm just running this locally. And so we want to put out the call to those of you who are in groups on Hilo. If they're public-facing groups, I'm looking for groups that would want to be featured on our homepage. So let me know, say something in the chat. You can shoot me an email. But it would just be like just what you're seeing here, like your icon, an image, a little two-liner about your group. And then it would go to the about page for your group. And so it could be a nice way to get some new members. and just be spotlighted and recognized for being awesome. Yeah, so let me know if you're interested in being part of the featured network that we're cultivating here.
Awesome. And I just put Claire's email as well in the chat so you can reach out to her directly. Thank you, Claire. Yay, exciting. All right, next up, we've got Tibet, who is going to run through the Hylo strategy document, which is something we've been working on for the last couple of months almost, or maybe even a year. So Tibet, over to you.
For all of our lives leading up to this moment. So yeah, speaking of kind of sneak peeks and communication, I think the theme of today's call is really about communicating what we were trying to do with Hylo to the world. And we have been working on, there's always all different kinds of materials that are useful for different audiences. But for a long time, I felt like we haven't really communicated the full vision and picture of what Hylo is and what our theory of change is in a very cohesive way. And so I've been working on a full white paper. It's currently like 70 pages long. It honestly could become a book at some point. You could imagine it going that direction. But in the meantime, we got to a place with it. We're like, okay, this is going to take some more time, but we want a version of this that's ready now to share with the world. That is kind of both capturing our current articulation of our vision and our purpose and theory of change, and expressing how that is going to land in the world in 2026. So what is our strategy this year? And so we kind of turned this really long white paper into a shorter 20-page-ish. We're calling it a strategic plan. We were trying to figure out what name to call it, maybe a strategic prospectus. And the goal is both to communicate what we're doing with the world and attract some interest and energy from folks who are interested, but specifically to draw in partnerships and funding. So I wanted to share, and this has not been shared widely yet, only with a few specific partners. We will share a link to this and would love your feedback. But I'm going to do a quick kind of abbreviated run through and hit some of the high points of this, both I think because it's interesting, and we would love your feedback, and we'll have a chance to discuss a little bit on the call today, but also to really share where we're landing with our 2026 strategy and our focus for this year. So, and here's, this is in Google Doc form. I'm going to share a doc send link that actually, maybe I'll just do that now so people can follow along if you like to prefer that way. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, so again, this is both communicating our kind of high-level strategy or high-level vision and theory of change, and then getting into our 2026 vision. And it kind of hits this sweet point in between the 60-page white paper that goes into a lot of detail and just a deck, which is kind of just hitting bullet points. We want to get a little bit deeper into communication of what we're working on here. So coordination infrastructure for planetary flourishing. And I'll also say that the original group that this was made for is a group that is particularly focused. Their framing of what we're working on now is addressing the poly crisis and the meta crisis. So it's a little bit oriented towards how do we address this intersection of all of the crises that our society is facing right now. So I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to kind of just run through. It starts with a little bit of the story of how we got here. For those who don't know the story of how Hylo originally was a for-profit VC-backed platform that kind of fell in the laps of our collective, the Terran Collective, and we have open sourced it and turned it into a technology commons that we're releasing into the world and wanting to build with you all. And then it gets into our kind of diagnosis, in a very short version of the poly crisis and the sort of deeper meta crisis below it, all of the kind of lower level cultural and institutional failures that kind of are generating the climate crisis and the breakdown of democracy and all the things we're facing right now. We have resulted in this civilization capable of planetary impact on a large scale without planetary stewardship. Stewardship being this ethic of care and responsibility for how we take care of our shared commons. And so we see this need for coordination systems that can out-cooperate the competition and the kind of competitive dynamics that exist and extractive dynamics that exist in our current tech platforms. So then we get into how our current platforms are making things worse. They are not helping. They are not neutral. They are actively increasing political divides and mental health issues and the breakdown of democracy and all of these things. And from there, we move into our big vision of both, kind of this other path that we see as possible in the world in general, with this kind of narrow, some people call it the third attractor or the hope attractor, where we avoid total climate collapse, and we also avoid shifting into entirely like authoritarian command and control structures, as we're seeing now happen across the world, and find a way to instead create this kind of mycelial network of bioregional, decentralized organizations and democracy that is remembering, and learning again how to care for our commons and cooperate and be in solidarity with each other and the more than human world. And so Hylo, we are hoping, can be the infrastructure to support this planetary flourishing, pro-social coordination infrastructure. And so at the core of how we do that is we see that the challenges we're facing are not technological, they're relational and cultural. And so it's really about healing our relational capacity, rebuilding the fabric of community and trust, and doing it in this kind of nested, autonomous, interoperable way. So we call it a biomimetic structure, mirroring how healthy living systems organize. We get into our kind of principles and values around how we get there, and then into our theory of change. Like, what is Hylo actually trying to do to accomplish this? And again, we see trust and relationship as this kind of like core foundation of effective coordination. Like, that has to exist before we can start doing more complex coordination together. And so if everyone wouldn't mind muting, I can hear somebody right now, or Yasmin, thank you. So starting with this foundation of trust and relationship, first we're putting Hylo out there to find and support the groups already doing impactful work and the place-based communities where regeneration is made real. We're going to help them weave this foundational fabric of relationship and trust that enables real cooperation within their groups. Then offer this kind of full toolkit, we call it the stewardship toolkit, all the appropriate tools needed for different types of coordination. Evolve with these groups as they grow and both are able to and need more complex coordination. And then, the final level is kind of connecting and weaving across groups and enabling these impact networks to coordinate with each other. And so then we start to get into what our focus is this year. This is where we're calling our go-to market is regional resilience and regeneration. So this year we're going to be deeply focused on activating place-based resilience networks. And we're still going to support all the groups that are on Hylo. Anyone who wants to bring their organization or community or nonprofit and use a non-extractive platform for your collaboration, great. But our particular focus as a team is going to be picking a few places in the world, some bioregions, and working with the local communities and organizations that are already doing resilience work and regeneration work, mutual aid groups, food system actors, emergency preparation, land trusts, farmers, civic organizations, and trying to onboard these regions kind of all at once into Hylo, into this backbone infrastructure of a resilience network that will weave across these groups, help deduplicate efforts, help funding flow where it needs to go, and activate participatory democracy and the people actually making decisions on in healthy ways for their watershed, for example. So yeah, that's our 2026 focus. The document does go much deeper into kind of all the pieces of this theory of change of relationship and trust coming first, the full stewardship toolkit. Oh yeah, I did want to mention this contextual aspect of Hylo. We think that a lot of the platforms that exist out there today kind of this one big global public square, or they're like specific small siloed groups. And we see the need to weave between these different contexts. Both, you have your private group context where certain types of coordination are happening. You have what we call the public commons, where you can discover groups to get involved in and invite people into your work. And we have place-based communities as well. And Hylo's magic is that we ultimately open up the ability to weave between these contexts and use the right context for the right type of collaboration and coordination. And that leads to our cross-group collaboration functionality capabilities. We get into all of the features of Hylo, what's been built so far, what's coming next, from communication to collective action and mutual aid. And so back to 2026, the feature set that we are going to be focusing on most is around mutual aid. So we have the core communication features. We have, we have events. We have decision-making tools. We have all this very broad suite of tools. But the thing we want to go deep on this year is mutual aid. So we have requests and offers already, but they're very basic. And we want to add, tracking of contribution, who is helping who, offering the ability to kind of thank each other, AI matchmaking to make it, faster and easier to make sure that your offer is being found or your request is being met. Eventually, probably not this year, but we're considering adding mutual credit currencies and crowdfunding as well. And we also are talking with one funder who wants to support us in this mutual aid work about an even more specific kind of iteration of it or instance of it, which will be sharing of tools, like a tool library, or sharing of resources, where you can imagine a neighborhood all saying, like, I have these tools, or a group of farmers in a region saying, I have this equipment, and being able to lend them out to each other. And this, there already are tools for this, but they're not widespread and they're not necessarily easy to use. And I think adding this as part of the kind of suite of mutual aid tools that will be in Hylo is going to be a huge win and offering. And mutual aid in general, there's more and more of a need for emergency prep and disaster response, supporting each other outside of markets that are increasingly becoming too expensive in many cases. And so we see this as really needed, and also there aren't amazing tools for it yet. This will also be building on our geographic and place-based tools. So goes through all of the features and functionality. It also talks about how Hylo ultimately is, the point is not to create another silo, right? We're trying to create a commons, and we want to be interoperable and integrated with all the other folks that are working on similar things. And so ultimately, we were trying to figure out which standardized protocols to build on. We're considering the AT protocol, which comes from the Blue Sky network, and talking to all these other platforms that are working on similar things, like One Project's Common Platform, Bloom Network, Social Roots, Catalyst, Murmurations, Open Future Coalition, New Public's Roundabout platform. So there's all these other platforms that are, holding different parts of the puzzle. And we are in conversation with all of them and trying to figure out how to collaborate and build ultimately an ecosystem. Then we get into how we measure success and some of the, ultimately we want to add more tracking of different metrics, both stuff that's kind of platform wide and stuff that groups define. But this includes things based on the pro-social design principles. How are we tracking, whether groups are doing an equitable distribution of contribution and benefit, or have fair and inclusive decision making. We want to be tracking and increasing social cohesion and trust across groups, tracking well-being, and of course, ecological impact, especially on the bioregional context. I mentioned a little bit our 2026 plans. We will be reaching out to folks to help us select the kind of bioregions we want to start with, and work, and the local stewards that are already on the ground doing resilience work that we can partner with. And ideally pay, I mean, we will need to raise money for this, but we want to pay stewards to be holding this backbone infrastructure sort of organizational space and creating these resilience hubs. And then, yes, from there, just really grow the network. We're ready to grow. We've been in this seed phase for a long time, building the platform, and we feel like we are ready to really grow. We're talking about some medium-term objectives, sort of more detail on what we would be measuring over time to see if we're succeeding around, things like growth and social cohesion, whether there's real reciprocity, solidarity, and mutual aid happening in the groups, whether participatory governance is growing and increasing and happening, cross-group coordination is happening, and we're having an impact on our local ecosystems. We talk about revenue models that we will be implementing in the coming years. Of course, the main platform will always be free to use, but we do imagine a pro version that has things like video and audio conferencing, AI assistance, custom domains, more storage. We are very, very close to releasing our paid group option, where groups can charge membership fees, and we can take a small cut of that. We already have our premium support models that we can put in the chat for those that don't know, and continue to look for grants and partnerships. So yeah, that's this document, and we're excited to share it out, get more feedback on it, and continue to figure out how to express our vision to the world in ways that resonate, and bring in the right types of groups and partners and funders. We'll probably we have decks already, but we'll probably update our decks from the completion of this document and share out this as well as other content that can be shared around. We'd love your support in kind of sharing this with the world. And I will pause there.
Thank you so much, Tibet. Would love to take questions. So if you can raise your hand, and then we can just go basically one by one. So if you have any questions about the document or anything that you heard, now is the time. Okay, Diana.
Hi, I'm so grateful to be here. I was drawn to this community from an 84-year-old mentor of mine named Evangeline Moen, and she's been in your feeds now for over a year and a half, and I've just been waiting for the right time to emerge, so I'm really grateful to be here. My question is, with your future offerings, has there been community conversation about creating a Hylo LLM to be able to provide security off of the Palantir circuitry? There's enough tech out there, open source, that could be a possibility, as well as this understanding that every hub could have their own LLM that would be locally secure as well as trained for the needs of that bioregion. Has that been discussed at all?
We have discussed that. It's not something that our team could hold in terms of trying to create that. I know there are tons of folks working on private local LLMs, kind of LLMs that are more attuned to ecosystem, have ecosystem data in their training. There's lots of folks working on these ideas, and we would love to use them and adopt them when they exist. I don't think that part is ours to also try and figure out on top of the kind of collaboration and coordination tools. But yes, we would love to not be using tools that are at risk of putting our communities at risk as much as possible.
Would your collaborations or knowledge of who is working on those be willing to, can you share that with me? I would like to be able to contact those organizations.
Some of them. I mean, there's organizations on Hylo that are core to this vision. There's the Great Simplification Community, the Nate Hagen's podcast community. That's great. We're stepping into partnership with a group called the EcoCiv Coalition that Jeremy Lent just wrote a book called Ecological Civilization, and they're going to be activating a network on Hylo to sort of bring their visions into grounded practice in the world. There's Earth Regeneration Alliance on Hylo. There's many great groups there. There's some networks. There's a network that we shared this with. That's kind of a smaller private network. It's called the Earthkind Network. It's not quite ready for public kind of visibility, although there will be some documents coming out of that group. And they're kind of a think tank trying to figure out strategy in general for solving the meta crisis.
Is there somewhere on the website that would list those folks working on this LLM localized private on local servers to get off of the data centers? Is that listed under that category? How would I find which organizations do that?
Maybe that, yeah. Why don't we follow up afterwards and I can send you some links.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, totally.
There's a question from Chris and Brendan about whether Hylo is a nonprofit and what's kind of the structure of the organization.
Yes, we are currently a nonprofit, fiscally sponsored nonprofit by this organization, Empowerment Works. We are in conversations with an organization called the Purpose Foundation that helps people spin up fully values-aligned for-profits that can take investment in non-extractive ways. So we are considering spinning up a for-profit that would be owned by the nonprofit as a way to be able to accept kind of different types of capital, as long as that capital is, in a structure that would make sure that investment couldn't kind of get in the way of our long-term purpose. And so there's various ways to set up the structure of the organization to prevent that. Purpose trusts is an example of that, but there's other ways. So right now we're fully nonprofit and considering setting up this hybrid structure in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Tibet. Mike, I see you have your hand up. Go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the part of the presentation that I was here for. I am relatively new to this specific community call. I joined, I became acquainted with Hylo because I'm a Lyft Economy alumni from Next Economy MBA cohort 4. Also I have some acquaintance with the sort of larger open source ecosystem because I was previously a program officer at Open Collective Foundation,
Nice.
that in 2024. And so I also see that you all are fundraising on Open Collective. So yeah, delighted to come into the call when I did. I'm very interested in the strategic plan. I currently have deep interest in bringing certain communities to the platform who are migrating out of various WhatsApp and Signal threads. But also, I have a broader interest in seeing some there's been a long gap in some of the solidarity economy infrastructure in the US. I'm on the board of New Economy Coalition and US Solidarity Economy Network. And we previously used to have a Lumen platform that was shared with the New Economy Organizers Network out of the UK, but that was abandoned quite a long time ago. This is all pre like 2015-ish. So yeah, so there's been a gap for a long time in sort of member platforms in that way. And what I'm hoping to see is for these particular networks to share stewardship of a platform. So that strategic plan would be very important for me to make that pitch. So yeah, thank you all for session. Sure.
Glad to have you here. Thanks for your work in the space.
Thank you, Mike. Susan, you're next.
Yes, hello. So yeah, a couple questions. I guess Tibet, you answer my first one about using the term resilience hub. Because it means something totally different to a lot of people. And the second is like, do you have a strategy for really supporting underserved, or frontline communities in terms of bringing them on to Hylo? And then the third question, when it comes to mutual aid, I know there's a lot of mutual aid groups like the one in New York City. I'll just post that in the chat here. And that is a completely public platform. And I know when there are emergencies that can be really important to have that sort of directory that is public. So I'm curious in terms of mutual aid, what you were thinking of with this. Hylo is not public, it's private, you have to join. So just curious about that. And a lot of mutual aid groups also use Signal on the other hand. So yeah. Curious about.
Great questions. And we're still early in the design process, both for how we're going to launch these resilience networks and how the mutual aid functionality will all work. I think that, as I mentioned, as we go into a region and work to launch a resilience network, and Susan, we would absolutely love to work with you in the Bay Delta on this. This is, the work that you've done here for many, many years. We want to work with existing on the ground, frontline community organizations that are doing resilience work and have been doing organizing in a region for, many years already. And so the idea is to find stewards that are deeply embedded in the communities and already have trust and connection and relationship. And I don't know if that's just a couple, 2 or 3, or if it's an organization that we would find to kind of play that role as the core community stewards. So I think that's going to be one of the bigger questions and processes for us as we launch these resilience networks, is finding the right stewards to kind of be in that central role. And hopefully, and make sure that they are diverse and representative of the communities that they're coming from. And on the other question about mutual aid functionality, Hylo does have the public common space. You can post Hylo posts publicly. And so one of the other aspects that we've been talking to various other platforms about is creating a interoperable mutual aid protocol so that requests and offers could, first of all, be shared publicly, and then also shared across platforms. And so things could come from another platform into Hylo and from Hylo into other platforms to kind of give them as widespread visibility as possible, because for mutual aid, most of the time you want that, not always. And so we do want to still have the ability for there to be private networks and communities that are just sharing amongst themselves. But also then the ability for particular requests or offers to be blasted as widely out as possible when that is desired. So there's a lot to figure out there, but it's very much on our minds. There's many hands. Tom, I think you're next.
Yeah, I'm sort of confused as an old man who's been around for a long time in different areas. And the one platform or semi-platform I'm most familiar with and encouraged by is Kothari's global tapestry of alternatives, which tries to pull all these groups together to deal with social change in the developing countries, globally, in terms of the issues that we're talking about here. This seems to be more of a clearinghouse where people are doing their own thing and then looking for people with references to deal with it. There doesn't seem to be any cohesive effort that is being done in the developing countries, such as Kothari's Global Tapestry and others, to try to build a cohesive bridge across various cultures, various experiences and knowledge bases to try to deal with the what people are now calling decolonialism. This seems to me to be could be as colonial as you want, depending on how these little groups are all put together and how what their objectives are. And I I just don't understand. This seems to be what we find on the internet anyway, where there's lots of groups looking for connections, for information, for funding, and what have you. And is Hilo just basically a clearinghouse for funding, for expertise, does it have a central goal, much like the developing countries are, who are trying to basically get out from underneath the colonial mentality, which exists quite well in a lot of the high-low areas right now here in the United States and the developing, trying to go with local. Some are trying to go national. Some are trying to go. I don't see much international issues here. I just see a bunch of local, not bunch of that sounds pejorative, but each community, sort of like next cities and all the rest of them that have goals to do development in housing and what have you. And they're looking for connections and funding and all the rest of it is high-low, basically a database essentially run by a group of people who manage high-low to figure out how they're going to be a distributor of knowledge for these various groups with no idea of cohesiveness across borders, except what the groups finding common interests.
Thank you, Tom. There was a lot there. I don't know if I can respond to all of it in a short period. I mean, I would say, in a sense, look at the document that I shared earlier to try and get a sense of our full theory of change and kind of vision of what we're trying to bring into the world. We are not just a clearinghouse. We are a tool that any group can use to coordinate and collaborate and communicate. And the goal is to build in these kind of pro-social design principles into how the platform is designed, such that the groups that are using it are encouraged towards greater cooperation, both internally. And then Hilo does have the ability for groups to connect with each other, to nest, to create networks and coalitions. And so bring these sort of like pro-social principles across groups around the world. Yes, any group can use Hilo for however you want. But what we call the commons, the Hilo Commons, the place where groups can be found and find each other and share posts publicly, is a very curated space with a very clear set of values that one has to agree to join that space. So we are putting a stake in the ground in some sense about what values we have and are promoting in the world in that public space. Within a group, groups can be doing whatever they want, but at the same time, we believe that how technology is designed and what tools we're offering will over time move towards greater pro-social behavior and greater cooperation. It's not going to solve everything. We don't think that a digital platform is going to solve all the world's problems, but we think it can be scaffolding and infrastructure to support more cooperative, pro-social ways of being with each other. So that's answering a little bit of your question, I hope, and we can continue this conversation over time, because these are the big questions we're trying to wrestle with together. Moni,
Could I ask one clarification here. I don't have your document. How do we get that document to be one of the things that I'm interested in? But it seems to me like you're focusing on the technology more than you're focusing on the people that are having to deal with issues where technology comes in as needed. And I see the same problem with academia. Stanford University is doing some work in these areas with regard to protection of property rights and things like this for underdeveloped countries. But they are getting, what they're doing is dependent on what the people who are trying to get the issues filled, and the technologies should take a sub issue until you can understand what the heck it is that you want to do, rather than starting with the technologies and then figuring out how to map them in to get these things to work. It sounds like development upside down.
Well, again, we are a digital platform. This is the piece of the puzzle that we are holding. We're not trying to solve all the world's problems, but we feel like we are a digitally connected society and civilization, and we're not going to that's going to continue. And so we think it is like a key important thing for us to be able to organize in spaces that are aligned with our values, or we're going to keep using these platforms that are extracting our attention and our dollars and dividing us and not designed for the outcomes that we're looking for. So again, I don't think Hylo is going to solve all the problems, but we think it is an important thing to exist in the world. And so that's why we are working on it. Moni, I see your voice next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Moni Vargas, and I'm with Otherwise, which is a group on Hylo. I've just joined their team. For the past year, I've been dabbling on Hylo, but it's so wonderful to have the document and then just learn more about your mission. My mission, I guess you could say, with Otherwise is cosmo-localizing. So basically bringing our wider mission into local communities. I'm based out of Southern California. And I will be gathering a lot of orgs that I've been in touch with, that I've volunteered for, that have been doing amazing work here. As you all probably know, after the big, fires last year, we had to mobilize quickly to meet the needs of our communities. One is my question is, will the Hylo team does it still need to decide which regions you will be focusing on to create these smaller groups? Is that what I'm understanding? And then if for some reason you do decide to focus on SoCal, then I'm more than happy to make some of these connections, as I do find quite a bit of value in this non-extractive platform. And I know that most folks I know want to leave and make the change, but they have nowhere to go. So that was my question, is maybe when will you be deciding, or how will you be deciding what these regions are? And if any of you are interested in learning more about Otherwise, please find us on Hylo. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Claire, feel free to cut me off at any time. I know your Wi-Fi keeps cutting in and out. Otherwise, I'll keep responding here. Or Yasmin, feel free to jump in. Yes, we are still deciding where to focus. Certainly the Bay Area will be one area because we're very embedded here. And we have, certain relationships and connections in other places that make sense for us to start with. But of course, anyone can launch a group on Hylo. It's not like we are trying to gatekeep here. It's more like, where do we as a small team with limited funding want to put our particular energies to catalyzing regional efforts this year. So that's where we're going to be like putting some more specific energy and attention. We haven't fully decided that yet. So yeah, let's talk, and we'll put the call out soon on Hylo. And so we have connections in Southern California as well. I'd love to chat about what we can do down there together. Thanks, Brandon.
All right. Well, it's really, really cool that you got this strategic plan there. And I am working on a couple things that are probably closely related. In fact, I just had a meeting a couple hours ago with the team at the Mediators Foundation, where we're developing civic tech. And one thing is this civic.social. And that's Adam Lake's project. Mine is Civic Intelligence Infrastructure, which is like a mapping interoperability thing. And you guys have already identified, I think, yeah, some core functions you want to make interoperable. And we have like more things that we're trying to make interoperable, like event management. Like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a uniform interoperable standard for that? We're working with MetaGov. And actually, this came up, in the meeting that I had with those people. They were like, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had interoperability with Hylo? And have you looked into that?" And it's like, "Yeah, we should, yeah, have talked to them about that. Like some sort of civic-based add-ins or plugins or something like that." And another thing is that, as you know, I've been working on that Open Haven thing with the CTA to look at like what are all the different peer-to-peer decentralized tools and stuff. And really been putting on my nerd glasses here a lot, going through that. But I just want to mention that, and it could be used within the larger, like Weave that you're doing here. I think you have access to the docs that I have put together. If not, I can share them with you. You could also go to civic.social, which is, I think, very much complementary with what you guys are doing. It's primarily looking through a civic lens, and I think Hylo tends to look primarily through like a bioregional or ecological lens. But the two are probably complementary quite a bit. And there's like some shared technical infrastructure to support a variety of functions, including at least those two.
Thanks, Brandon, for your ongoing leadership here. And yeah, we're constantly talking about how to integrate and be interoperable with other tools and platforms and trying to figure out which protocols to build on for that and figure out how to fund that work, because the biggest problem is most of these platforms don't have resources to focus in that area in particular. We do, I just mentioned in the chat, we do have APIs in Hylo. We do have Zapier integration, so you can integrate Hylo with your Google Calendar, your Typeform, your Slack already. And we're also, yeah, Brandon, we're in very much regular conversation with MetaGov and lots of others about continuing this interoperability work. And I want to keep working with you on that. Also through the Open Haven container and fundraising for that in particular. And we had a grant proposal to a funder last year to work on interoperability, and then that foundation completely shut down. So there was some promising possibilities there, and there's more conversations continuing to happen. Adrian.
Yeah, I want to address Tom's thing. I am not a tech person. I don't even, you all speak a foreign language to me, but I just want to share how Hylo is working for me. I've been able to connect an indigenous form of with very few people so far, like just a handful of people. There's 20 some or something, but a proposed indigenous form of governance that's inclusive for everyone, to bioregionalism, to the apps that connect people on the ground for basic needs of food, of co-creating systems for healthcare, for food systems, for holistic regenerative environmental education, for land agreements, for all sorts of things. And I've barely scratched the surface. I barely know what I'm doing. And I just want to speak to the power of this, and just put it in kudos for it, and maybe give an example, Tom, for how this can work a little bit, just to give you an idea. And this is just a handful of people connecting across many different visions and skill sets and interconnecting them. And I can see a way we can do that unprecedented collaboration that's needed for these times. So just to put that in, I hope that helps you see how something. Okay.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Glad to hear it. Kevin.
Hi, thanks for this. I'll try to be quick. So I discovered y'all through an online festival called Limicon. They're a group that has a thing on your channel there. But my organization is the Wellbeing Economic Alliance of Canada, and we're incredibly aligned. Like I found when I found Hylo through Limicon, I was like, oh my God, if this didn't exist, we would try to build it, kind of thing. So it's nice. You just shortcutted probably about 7 or 8 years of work for us. But something I'm really curious about, I'm wondering if you've seen this paper called "Mapping the Coherence Journey." It's very similar in thinking about to what you're thinking about, but it's kind of coming from this place where it's talking about how our digital technologies are scaling exponentially, but our actual like human technologies of collaboration are still linear and are falling behind. So now we've got all of these apps and these tools, but the actual human skills of collaboration tend to be lacking and falling behind the ability to fully exploit these tools and use these tools for the purpose that we want them for. So, and what I'm wondering is, I had this experience in the Limicon group on Hilo, where somebody made some unfortunate comments. I won't go into what they were, and was unresponsive to people trying to kind of call them in. I'm wondering if I know you're a small team, but I'm wondering if you've given any thought to having like a moderation community or moderator community of folks who can actively work with people to help mitigate some of those conflicts that are inevitable within collaboration, where diverse groups of people with diverse ideas and diverse perspectives come together and can step on each other's toes. So, and this mapping, this little the paper that I put in the chat there, it kind of goes into how far behind we can tend to fall with that side of things. So I'm just curious about that,
Yeah.
whether there's any thought to how you approach that. And the reason why I ask is because my actual business is called Second Wind Liberation, and that's the work that we do.
Nice. Yeah, that's absolutely something we think about, and trying to figure out how to design it into the platform, and have made small steps here so far, right? It's like every group has the shared purpose and agreements that everyone has to agree to. There is collective moderation capabilities where you can flag something and say, this thing broke this agreement in our group, and it will start to blur out, but other people can respond to the post and disagree or agree. So we have some of that. There's sort of like, the surface level capabilities built into the platform. But over time, we would love to bring in this type of, what you'd shared in the post, or what it sounds like you're working on, like both training and assistance and tips into the platform and documentation itself, but also connecting groups to a network of mediators. We think would be so cool, or facilitators and people that we have curated that are aligned with our kind of principles. Imagine a group is dealing with that conflict and they're like, we don't have the skills, but right within the platform, it was possible to like call in a mediator, and it could be a paid thing, like the group would pay you as a facilitator or mediator to come in and support them, or there could be volunteers as well. But that type of thing gets us really excited, because then we don't think technology is going to solve all of our problems, and we can design it in very different ways and really bring in our values in a more practical, grounded way, like that, like actually connect people to mediators when they need it.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're 3 minutes away from ending the call, so maybe we'll take one more question, and then I have a few announcements to make. Chuck, is your hand raised?
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm primarily interested in achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which has 169 sub-goals within them. Many of those are on health and environment. And I'm really interested in how to connect this group with that effort through Rotary. I'm going primarily through Rotary because of all of its power and connections globally. But I'm really excited about the whole addressing the root causes of all these problems. And I think that's what the 17 Sustainable Development Goals were intended to do, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but we're going to have to buy them. And I've got a proposal to, anyway, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about using the SDGs and the donut economics indicators as some of the kind of measurements that we offer, both on like a platform and group level basis, where we start to track progress over time and make dashboards visible within the platform, and start to create this like collective energy of like, oh, we're actually making progress on these things over time as groups and potentially on a platform wide level. So that's definitely something we would like to do, and maybe we should talk about that.
Perfect.
Tibet, thank you for all the incredible, you are on a roll today. So you've been good with all the questions. Thank you all so much. I want to share that our next community call is going to be May 20th at 10 a.m. Let's see. We'll send you the link by email. But for now, if I can ask you to put your camera on, if you're comfortable, we're going to take a group photo before we say goodbye. And I will do that on a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay! Beautiful. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And we didn't have a chance to do a demo, but we'll do it next month for those who are new to Hylo. And we wish you an incredible day, whatever you might be.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Post the
guys.
link one more time to this strategy document in the chat for those who missed it.
Thank you so much.
See you all. See you on Hylo.
Yes. Thank you all so much.